Testing, testing.
Ladies and gentlemen, could I ask you to take your seats, please? Welcome to tonight's full council meeting. I am standing in this evening for our chair, Dave Crisfield, who sadly is poorly, so I'm sure we all wish a speedy recovery. We've got a fairly packed agenda this evening, so if we could get straight on with it. Robin, I believe you have a presentation.
And as soon as we start, we lost the thing. Doesn't matter if you can't find it, I'll just talk. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's right, just put that one up. Yeah, just go to the next page. Yeah, it's fine. So apologies, I would normally stay for the debate, but we've got a flooding meeting tonight, and obviously Kai's going to be here rather than at the flooding meeting. So apologies that I have to run off because I would like to have heard the debate. I know from discussions offline that actually probably what you're going to talk about tonight is a very modest increase in the precepts and a modest increase in your budget, which I think is very welcome from what we said last year. But I just thought, even though we know that, I just thought I'd just point out a few things. So I pulled these today. The new figures come out tomorrow, which is a bit annoying, really. So these are a month out of date. But actually, you know, things are more expensive at the moment, particularly things like transport. I don't know whether you know, but if you've read the neighbourhood plan, in Shepton Mallet as a town, there's a much higher incidence of car ownership and particularly a much higher incidence of van ownership, people running their own businesses. So actually things like transport costs and fuel costs really hit people in Shepton, you know, really hurts them in their pocket. You can just go to the next page. So the really interesting thing was that NALC, National Association of Local Councils, do an analysis of the precept every year. So they look nationally at the precepts. So there's about 10,000 town and parish councils in England. It's about 280 in Somerset Council area-ish. And Shepton Mallet had the rather unenviable privilege of being in the top 5 of the highest increases in NALC's assessment for last year. And then if you did the analysis of those top 5, Shepton came second nationally for the highest increase by population. Okay, so that's probably just something to think about in terms of your deliberations tonight. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you as ever, Robin. John, could we have you next, please?
That's better. Thanks for affording me the time to come and speak to you. We all know the Old Crown pub building in Cat's Ash, which is at the bottom of Cowell Street. It's become a major concern for local residents living in the vicinity due to the manifest drug taking and other antisocial behaviour occurring there. The police are doing what they can, but the long-term solution to this problem would be the issue of a community protection warning to the building owner. This was most effective, well, on the service of the subsequent community protection order in putting the lid on nefarious activities at the Bell in Market Square a few years ago. Will Shepton Mallet Town Council work with me, Somerset Council and the local MP, Tessa Munt, with a view to lending their support to obtaining such a community protection warning. I'm happy to take any questions as to why I think that's necessary, but that's the ask from me. Thank you.
So we are slightly against the clock here, but does anybody have any quick questions around that point? Matt?
It's not so much a question, but I agree with Mr. Hardy. I live behind that building and it's a disgrace. Built in 1652, it could actually be a beautiful building. It's literally falling apart. Chunks are falling off it daily. I don't personally see much antisocial behaviour other than some dodgy individuals coming and going, but I couldn't say what they're actually doing. But the stench of weed is constant. We have, as a council, agreed to set up a group, a sort of task and finish group, to look at, are they called Section 215 notices, for requesting Somerset Council to, let me get this right, basically potentially do maintenance on a building and then bill the landowner. And the work task and finish group was going to identify some buildings of which that could well be one, I suspect. So I just wondered where we're at that as a council. We probably don't need an answer now, but John, we're on with this. So if you'd like to be part of that group, I suggest maybe as a council we contact John. But I agree that something needs to be done because it's a disgrace, that building. Thank you.
It was just thank you for that. I mean, obviously, I completely agree with what Matt has said. Do we know what the current position is? And obviously, we might address that to the police later. But do we know what the police's position at the present time is on this that you are aware of?
The major problem for the police is a lack of evidence, because the people who live in that vicinity are unwilling, frightened to actually report things. There are fights in the street which go unreported. There are large cars turning up and being surrounded by people, which possibly could be a delivery of some sort. And this is the old story of a tree falling in the forest, not making a sound. Unless it's reported, the police don't have the evidence to proceed. And it won't be reported while local residents feel it's not worth it if they're on their own. I've spent the last 6 weeks talking to local residents, and I had a meeting with them last week to encourage them to report things confidentially, preferably not anonymously, but there are ways that can be done without anybody knowing what has been said. Which will give them, the police, the evidence. And if we are going to go for a CPW initially, we need the evidence to actually support that as well. So by flagging this up, by having if you like, a project with an end, I think people will be encouraged to come forward and report that evidence they see every day.
Just quickly, please.
Yeah, one little question. Have any approaches to the actual owner been made?
No, this is effectively my first step, because I think it's good to get all the talents around a table first. And one of the problems is a lot of people tell me things, and when I ask them, how do you know that, they can't tell me. And the important thing, obviously, is we proceed on a basis of fact rather than surmise, because then things go badly wrong.
I think basically listening to what's being said around the table and just having a very quick conversation with Claire, because obviously this came in rather late today. But I think collectively we're very supportive of something being done, and obviously as a council we are as well. So that we would make representations to our unitary councillors, that we would also be more than happy to take that forward. So let's maybe pick this up offline.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. So over to you guys then, please. Thank you.
Good evening. So firstly, my name's Dan Jeffries. I'm the neighbourhood sergeant for Frome and Shepton Mallet. My colleague Ellis is the PCSO supervisor for that team. Together, we manage the neighbourhood team. Tonight's going to be a bit of a light touch from ourselves. I'm quite conscious that we haven't been here for quite some time, really. So my intention was to rectify that, if you like, and ensure that our attendance in these meetings is a bit more regular. So firstly, to introduce ourselves, and explain a little bit in terms of the team makeup, resources, etc. So within Frome and Shepton neighbourhood team, you'll see all our details on our website, of course, but just to explain the makeup, we're obviously split across those two towns. Shepton, you have 3 PCSOs for Shepton and 1 PC. For Frome, you have 3 PCs and is it 6 PCSOs, so yeah, just under 10 in total for that team over in Frome. But just so you're aware, we cover both those areas, and that's the current resourcing for that. Resourcing obviously is a constant issue for the police nationally as well as locally. The Chief Constable, I'm aware, recently talked on the news, referenced that and the staffing issues across the force area. PCSO numbers, for example, have been cut down from about 280 to around 230. However, what I would say, just as a bit of optimism around that, is actually our team is a bit blessed in terms of numbers for PCSOs. We're probably one of the highest number of PCSOs across the force in terms of our team. So actually, we're quite lucky in that sense. And actually, the losses in terms of those numbers of PCSOs are more through natural attrition, if you like. They're just not getting replaced when they retire. However, we are currently doing a PCSO recruitment as well to ensure that our numbers are maintained at the level that the Chief Constable has set. But as I said, for us in Shepton and Frome, our numbers for PCSOs are strong. In terms of the PCs, we are also due to get another police officer come over to Shepton mid-February, so we'll go up to 2 PCs there. So just so you're aware, that's what the numbers are on my team. In terms of the policing of Shepton, it's not just obviously neighbourhood, it's also patrol response teams. They operate out of Shepton, of course, at Shepton Police Station, and you've got 5 response teams there as well. So just to kind of cover for you what the resources are, that's what it looks like in terms of the policing picture for Shepton. Recently, our kind of big drives have been certainly over the Christmas period, December into January. We do it every year, but it's around the fatal top 5 offences in terms of road policing. So we've had rather successful activity there with numerous arrests made, drink driving, drug driving, etc. In terms of our priorities going forward, we have continued ASB, particularly in the parks, such as Collett Park, and youths there that we'll be tackling there. As I said, this is kind of the first of what I hope is going to be several regular appearances from ourselves. So what I would also encourage going forward is, please, if you do have questions, then just to kind of hopefully come up with them in advance to let us know, and then I can come here, and if there's something specific you would like covered, then we can cover that off in the meeting. So just please, just an encouragement just to provide that in advance. More than happy to attend and focus on an area that is of concern to you.
Thank you, indeed.
Hi, as Dan mentioned, I'm Ellis, so I cover Shepton and Frome as PCSO supervisor. Not really much to add from what as Dan has said. I know I sent out a report to Claire that has then been fed out. It's very generic. I appreciate it's probably not much information in there, but as we go forward, if you can just let us know prior, like Dan said, what exactly you would like in that report, and then we can feed that back depending on the information that is being requested. Yeah, and hopefully we can attend these more regularly and get to know you all better. So that's kind of it for me.
Well, thank you both very much for your time. Do we have any questions regarding anything that's been said? Obviously, I'm sure we've got things that we'd like to talk about on a sort of a wider level, but what we've perhaps talked about doing is submitting those. So really tonight, the discussion is about anything that you've heard already. So does anybody have Kai?
This is maybe not totally directly related, but we're going to discuss soon and have already started discussing provision of, or taking over the provision of surveillance cameras. You know, the cameras that we have in town that used to be run by Somerset. From your angle, how useful are they for you?
Say that again.
The surveillance cameras, you know, the various cameras. So I know not a lot of them are always turned on, but obviously we want to do some planning about taking them on, taking which ones, you know, are useful for us. I think you have better knowledge as to what is useful than we do.
So yeah, I'll cover that in terms of I've had similar conversations with Frome Town Council around this as well. It's obviously just the understanding, because they're funding towards those cameras now, is they just want to know what are they utilised for, how effective they are in terms of the policing response, etc.
Yeah.
So very effective is what I would say. CCTV is often our best evidence that we have of offences. So it's useful in a couple of ways. One, to capture evidence of an offence that has occurred, but secondly, proactively to prevent offending, because the cameras themselves are monitored, and they can call up, as they often do on our radios, and say, look, we've got a potential issue occurring in this area, and we can respond preemptively there to stop an offence occurring.
Right.
So it's, for us, very effective, and sometimes, again, evidentially, potentially the only evidence we're ever going to get, if no one comes forward to report something. So from our perspective, that continued coverage is absolutely vital, and it just provides that bit of safety as well to the public, knowing that as they're walking about, they've got that coverage there, and they've got somebody in a control room watching those cameras as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one we've already discussed is the one in Collett Park, because we have obviously spent a fair bit of money there in the play park, so we want a little bit of evidence if it occurs, and we'll need to modernize that camera. But other than that, I guess town centre cameras, would you say?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Those high footfall areas, predominantly, you know, where you get your bang for your buck, if you like.
Thank you very much indeed for answering that. I think actually the CCTV stuff, there is an update that's about to be put in the bulletin, actually. So, but thank you for your question, Kai, and thank you for answering it so succinctly. So I think if
James has indicated.
Sorry, James, very quickly.
Just a quickie. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it, and I welcome further visits. So you say 117 violent crimes against the person in the last 3 months, which is about 40 a month. It's useful to have information. Even more useful to have a bit more information than that. I guess we can feed that back through questions.
Yeah.
So I'd be keen to learn a little bit more about that. And the other thing is always what we're asked by people is, what's the updated way of contacting you and under what circumstances? Some people don't like to get in contact and bother you when you're busy, but, you know, under what kind of criteria should they be contacting you? And what's the best method of contacting you is what we're always asked in Sheffield.
So I know there's been a lot of frustration around the 101 system and how long people wait, and they sometimes give up at that point. So you can report via our website. So there's particular subcategories that you can report through. If it's something that can be dealt with 24, 48 hours time, then I would suggest reporting it online. Obviously, an emergency 999, or if you would also like to contact us on 101. So I think a lot of people don't know about the online reporting, so you can do it.
And we push them. Sorry, and we push them to look in one place for that advice, or do we just give them that advice?
So if you go onto the website, there is a report section.
That's the up-to-date one. Okay, great.
And then it'll be sort of ASB or road related.
And I was just going to put, obviously in Shepton we have the front office here as well, which not every area unfortunately has. So you can physically attend to report that in person as well.
I think we can certainly add that link to the bulletin, but thank you for that. I think we really do need to move on actually, but thank you again for attending this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
So we move on to apologies. Do we have any apologies, Claire?
Please.
Jane, for personal reasons. So Becky Stokes-Stevens and Jane for personal reasons. Dave is ill and Tom is at work.
I think, have we received any apologies from Edric?
No.
We haven't, okay.
If councillors have received apologies from Edric, then they can also be received and considered in the same way as had they come through us.
Wonderful. Are we?
He has given his apologies because he's actually informed me of that. So I will give that. So I thought he'd done it for everybody otherwise.
Are we happy to accept the apologies as given? Thank you. Could I have a show of hands, please? Wonderful. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, thank you very much indeed. Minutes, so the minutes from last meeting, are we happy to accept that they are an accurate, Matt?
Proposed amendment to the full council of 22nd of October. I specifically asked for it to be minuted that I was disappointed that we didn't have attendance from Councillor Height at all in the last municipal year, and that wasn't recorded, so I'd like that recorded, please. And other than that, I'm happy to accept the minutes.
Okay, so to make an amendment to the minutes, we just need that to be, so that obviously covers councillor Howson's proposal. We just need somebody else to second that and you accept that amendment. Brilliant. I'll take the first hand I saw, which was Kai, because it was right next to you. I'll make a hand amendment in here, and then when these minutes are signed, they will be initialed with that additional amendment. Sorry, I've got to write my neatest.
So do we now need a proposer and a seconder and a show of hands? Is that correct? So can we, sorry. Okay, so can we have a show of hands then, please? Thank you very much. Sorry, we didn't.
My abstention for that.
We
I think
did
for reasons I ought to.
We did indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me just sign.
Can you please initial there, because that's the amendment. And then initial there. Please initial there. Sign and date. 14th of January, 2025.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome. And was the vote just relating to that one set of minutes? Yeah, that's fine. We've got the 29th of October as the next minutes then. Because there are two sets of minutes to
We have to vote on that one as well then.
please.
So do I have, so are we happy with the other set of minutes? Yes, so we have a proposer. Do we have a seconder? And if we could have a show of hands, please. Thank you.
So again, initial. Sign and date. It is still the 4th of January.
Okay. Brilliant.
No.
So item 6.4, I hope we've all read that. Are there any specific questions? Are we happy? Sorry, Matt.
I don't want to put people on the spot, but the CCTV camera in Collett Park, where are we at with that? Or, yeah, just a quick one. Thank you.
I'll do a brief update here and then I'll provide a bigger update in the bulletin. So we have requested for that camera to be added to the system that's monitored 24/7 directly out of Taunton with the other cameras. I've received a quote for that, but I had also asked for a quote to relive the camera that is outside the Commercial Road toilets and add that onto the system. It's currently a redundant camera that feeds into an old VHS recorder. So because of that, it's made it slightly more complicated and they've seemed to get muddled in what my request was. So I've gone back to ask for clarification. But I will give you an update on where we are with all CCTV so that we can bring that online.
James.
We're on 6.4, yes? We're rushing through.
We are indeed.
On the Ray meeting, I was interested to read that the cleaning of the high street was going to be on, and the market cross was going to be on a monthly basis on request to our town rangers. But then it said a monthly basis ahead of the Sunday market. So is that just ahead of each Sunday market, or is that on a monthly basis? Sorry to put you on the spot.
You have. My memory, so subject to failure, was that it would be a monthly clean, but the timing of it would coincide with the weekend before the markets when the market was falling, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That does make sense.
In terms of progress on that, we are waiting for delivery of the specialist materials for that. In fact, the boxes arrived today, so it's possibly in those boxes. It might now be here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Kai.
I had one little question referring back to the CCTV camera in the park, and that was, I was under the understanding that that camera was only taking pictures once every 20 seconds or something like that. And that last time that we had a problem in the park, it wasn't eligible as evidence. And we had discussed wanting a better, newer camera there. Is that part of the?
I'll give that as part of the
Okay,
update.
great. Thank you.
Garth.
It was just something that to add because it's not actually on the report. I spoke to Claire just before the meeting, and the arch at the Strawberry Arch on Canard's Grave Road seems to be moving on from what Claire was telling me, with interest coming back from Somerset Council at long last after about 18 months. But anyway, I just wanted to add that it's not gone dead.
Okay, thank you. James.
Sorry, just to go back to the street cleaning. If that could be put on the bulletin, I don't know the circulation of the bulletin, but I guess they're all interested people in Shepton who don't often see it mentioned. And I think that would be gladly received as and when it starts up as a good news point would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Martin?
Right, as Chair, 4.10, the Somerset Council report. I'll just briefly refer to that. I obviously wrote about the Friday market before I understood that it was a substantive issue on this agenda, so nothing to add to that. There are two items, though, where I think I ought to bring your attention, which has come up very much this week, and I don't think can wait until our next agenda. First of all, the Somerset Council budget. There, I think I just need to flag up that there remains a budget deficit of quite a substantial amount. A lot of contributions to this, for example, the increase in national insurance from national government. Okay for our people, but not necessarily. And the government has said that they will refund it for councils, but they don't necessarily refund it to the third parties that we deal with. So we may be facing increased costs. So I'm just saying, I don't think everybody really needs to realise that we're not home and dry yet, as far as the finance is concerned. The other thing I ought to refer to you is the fact that quite a short window, but we are looking at the Local Government Boundary Commission for England review. This has got to be considered by the 20th of January, i.e. next Monday, and anybody can contribute, including yourselves, including the council. We had a meeting about it today of the Constitution and Governance Committee. A proposal has been put forward for Somerset Council to consider. It has actually been turned down because there's quite a lot of unhappiness within the ranks about what's been proposed. Though I think I will flag up that as far as Shepton Mallet concerned, whereas we are now a two-member ward of Shepton Mallet and Croscombe, what is being proposed for Shepton is a single ward for Shepton East and a single ward for Shepton West and Pilton, no longer Croscombe. I'm not saying this is in tablets of stone now because the thing was turned out today, but I'd be very surprised if that doesn't continue into your further consideration. It will come back to us all for us all to consider, but I'm just flagging that up now, is that is what has been proposed. Okay, so that's just the two things I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Just a couple of things. Firstly, thank you to officers for very quickly sorting out the damage to the skate park. I think it was back in October now, but the contractors did a really good job. So thank you for that. And also thank you to all councillors and officers for the recruiting the grounds care contract person. I understand that's been a positive experience so far. I have a question though. What's the best way, it's to Claire really, of if a councillor sees something we think the rangers should be doing, or if we see a flower bed that needs attendance or something like that, what's the best thing? Well, how do we contact the ranger team? Is it via yourself or via Jack?
Jack does now have an email address. I appreciate I haven't sent that out all to you. So I would say that if you send it to me in the first instance, and then because I'm liaising daily with Jack on this topic, as we go forward, if it turns out that the team are functioning more independently from me, I will then just re-divert those and say you can go direct. But just for now, so that I'm aware if you come to me.
Thank you.
In that context, probably based on my lack of experience in the town council, but I'd like some clarity about the process of how it is possible that the town council can employ someone new without discussing it in the whole council. I did not understand that, and I still haven't quite understood it. I've had more arguments why that was the sensible thing to do, but I would still like the basic principle of it explained, because I thought it's quite an important thing that we do here, employing new people, and not the whole council has discussed it.
Okay, so in very quick terms, the Policy and Resources Committee had an underspend on the staffing budget. There also was a gap in work provision, if you like, from the retirement of our previous staff member who dealt with the grounds when it was a contract. Then that work was redistributed. So when Tara resigned and we replaced her temporarily with a projects person, so that was that half of the job, but the half of the job that was grounds was still being left undelivered and just being held together by the remaining members of staff. So with the existing underspend, and because it's only a temporary role, it was effectively the same as bringing in a contractor just to cover that base, but it's not a full-time role. That's what's in front of you tonight as one of the items on the agenda. It's a temporary fix.
Do we have any further questions? Okay, thank you. So moving on, so we've all hopefully read the police report, and I think what Claire and I were discussing earlier on, if there are any matters that we feel have arisen as a result of that, or any other matters for that matter that we want to take forward, let's really try and sort of foster new relationships with the police locally. So submit those through the normal channels. Thank you, Martin, as ever, for your report. Is there anything other than what you've already added to that you'd like to add? No. Are there any questions from anybody about anything that's in Martin's report? No? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So that was really just to note. So thank you very much indeed.
Sorry, Chair, I suppose I ought to reinforce this thing about if anybody wants to contribute to this boundary commission discussion, everybody's welcome to do it. What I could do is send Town Clerk the link, or unless you've got it already.
If you could send it again,
Fine.
that would just make my life easier if I could be so bold as to ask you, and then I will include it in the bulletin that goes out on Thursday.
Good idea, because it's still, as I say, it's still 20th. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much indeed. So moving on to item 6.5, the third quarter report. If I could hand us over to Kerry for this, please.
Thank you. Yes, so the Q3 report is within the papers. So this takes us up to the end of December. There's details of the performance against the budget to date. I've also included a projected year-end position, but thank you. But I must stress that that report from that system doesn't include the transfers in and out of the EMRs. So that just gives us an idea of where our cost centres are at. So the overall performance against budget at the end of quarter three is showing at 103.4% for income, and it's 69.5% for expenditure. So it is broadly in line with where we would expect to be. There's nothing to flag in terms of overspends. And there may be some savings at year end, particularly staffing. I'm anticipating a saving there because we haven't had all of our roles filled throughout the whole year, and all the hours carried out that were originally budgeted for. And we're obviously using some of that in underspend for our temporary open spaces manager, and also our legal and professional fees. I'm anticipating an underspend. In terms of our income, is looking really good. We've had more bank interest than we initially anticipated. So that's fantastic. I think we're looking at having, in terms of interest, an increase of about £20,000.
Super, thank you. Are there any questions? Abby?
Yeah, just one. P&R for 400, it says 1,000% income. Should it be 100?
No, it's very misleading because there was no income budgeted in that cost centre.
Okay.
So we got some income in for the Youth Council, which we allocated directly to an EMR, but through the Policy and Resources cost centre. So that 2,500 has come in to a line that had nothing budgeted. Yes, I mean, it is 1,000%, but it is 1,000% purely because there was no income budgeted there originally.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I'm very sorry.
Do we have any other questions at all? Matt?
Say if you're not able to do this, or it's not prudent to do so, but are you able to articulate what a potential underspend might look like this year? If you said there are going to be savings in HR and was it legal fees, are we looking at a total underspend this year? And if so, what amount? And if it's not prudent to say now, because lots of things might change, then say that,
Yeah, absolutely. A lot may change prior to the end of the year, so I don't want to give kind of a definite answer. However, when I've looked at the savings that we will potentially be making against the additional income, I worked out that we had about an £80,000 leeway there. We will be doing some movements to EMRs, so this will not all go into general reserves at the end of the year. But I am anticipating some savings. Would you agree, Claire?
I was just going to say, Chair, if I could, there's another element to factor in that won't come anywhere close to the amount that Kerry's referring to. I'm so sorry to have feedback. Is that we had a break-in at the depot over the New Year period, which has meant the hand tools have been stolen. We are in the process of claiming that through the insurance, but in the meantime, we do need to spend to recover that cost. Our financial regulations allow me to proceed with that because it's an emergency, so I'm going ahead. So when you get closer to year end, you will see an overspend on that repairs and maintenance budget line where we would be buying those assets from, and eventually it should balance out broadly with insurance. It is quite possible that, notwithstanding the excess on the insurance, which is 250, that we might find that we've spent more to replace than we did when we made the initial purchases, but we're trying to keep it roughly like for like. So just to make you aware that that is going on, but it won't touch in the region of the 80,000.
Thank you. Do we have any other further questions? Okay, so moving on, it's the financial risk assessment. So that is also over to Kerry. Could I hand over to you, please?
So our external audit requires us to review our financial risk assessment annually. Our policy at Shepton Mallet is to review every 6 months. So the town clerk and myself have reviewed the financial risk assessment, and we have made the recommended changes within the papers. With the, if I will briefly go through the changes that we have suggested, cash handling, we have increased the impact to 2. This isn't specific to us, but we're obviously very aware of lots of cyber security scams. There's lots going on around. People are getting very clever with the way that they target places. So we just want to make sure that is on our radar, and the impact would be moderate if it did happen. Purchase ledger, we have increased the likelihood to 3. This is in terms of payments not being made or late. That's because we are still having some issues with bank logins. So sometimes we do have a struggle a little bit. We haven't missed any payments to date, but it's just on the radar. Sales ledger we have reduced to 1 for likelihood. We have fairly limited sales ledger, sales invoicing, and now that I'm in post, it's monitored closely. It obviously was monitored before, but you had many hats on. And staff, we have increased the likelihood of to 2 because we've had staffing changes, but we've also increased the impact to high, and this was following a recommendation from our internal auditor as well, because staffing it's our biggest risk for business to continue as usual. And then we have just our VAT charged on sales we have kept as before, because it is quite a complex area. It's an area that we're constantly learning about and we're looking into. But the VAT claimed within the time limit we've reduced back down, because all our recent claims have been submitted within the correct window, and we've had formal notification from HMRC that our VAT penalty points have been reset to 0. That was all the changes that we've made, and overall our score is 2, so it is considered as low financial risk, if you're happy with those changes.
Super, thank you very much. It's very comprehensive. Does anybody have any questions at all? So we have a recommendation in front of us that we adopt the financial risk assessment and any mitigation measures identified, delegate to the town clerk all details in discharging this decision. Do we have a proposer, please?
You've got Rob.
Got Rob, thank you. And the seconder? Abby? Can we have a show of hands? Thank you very much.
Carried. Chair, could I just ask you to sign there, please? And then our auditor knows that this is the one that we've signed. I'll do the rest later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's what I'll do.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us on to item 6.7, the community transport scheme. And if I could hand over to Claire on this one, please.
Okay, so this is in front of you. It's actually a really fairly simple agenda item for you because this is not in our strategic plan, but it's an area of need within Shepton Mallet, and that's been identified by Health Connectors, Somerset Council and various third sector organisations that the need for community transport is high in Shepton Mallet. So there is an opportunity that this town council can take to instigate a community transport scheme, not with the intention of running it forever more, but to set it up with funding from other places, get it off the ground, and then allow the volunteers to take it forward and sever the ties from the council. So we get it going, establish it, and then leave it to do its thing. So because it's not in the strategic plan and it's new to you, what we're asking tonight is, do you agree that we spend some officer time in looking into this and scoping it out in more detail? You will see that Laura provided a link that's already fairly well scoped in the papers of what this is likely to look like and how it will gather its own independence. But we just need permission to take that to the next step and bring you back a proper proposal.
Does anybody have any questions? So starting with Janet.
I'll try.
Okay. Just as a point of clarity, obviously this is Laura's report. Claire is very kindly fielding the questions. So.
Thanks, Claire. It was just actually in the questions of, do we have a rough guesstimate of how many hours you're actually looking to release? Could we say releasing some hours? What does some mean? I know that's very grey.
Some to me means releasing the number of hours that I have put forward to be released in the staff structure, where Laura would no longer look after the ACT committee and instead would be freed up to do more community-based work. We already know that she works exceptionally well with the community on the community grants, not only in facilitating the grants we provide, but also helping the community find other grants. So this is just honing her skills there. If she's not spending the time on ACT, she can spend it on that. So to some extent, it is contingent on the staff structure later on in this agenda going forward as proposed. So I haven't put an exact number on it. I have it back in the office because I did a spreadsheet, you'd be surprised to hear, but I just don't have that number in front of me.
Sorry, Janet.
I had a follow on as well. Thanks, Claire. That's really helpful. The other thing is, I'm sure, unless it's sort of old age as it were, we had discussion about this and we talked about Mendip Community Transport. I mean, what's the liaison and interface here? And I know Mendip Community Transport obviously charge a service, and this is proposed to be a free service, but presumably that would be the exploration that Laura would do if she was looking at, could they take this on? Is that correct? Sorry.
She mentioned them this morning when I was debriefing with her about it, and I can't quite remember the detail that related to. But yes, it would form part of that scope, and I can make that a specific question. This is the benefit of bringing it in front of you today. You can ask me what areas you particularly want to be explored.
Kai.
The idea of having this run by volunteers eventually, set up by the town council, but then run by volunteers eventually, sounds intriguing and sounds attractive. But are there any of these volunteers forthcoming? I mean, I think it would be good to know in order to make the decision whether there's actually an interest of some people wanting to take this on, so that it doesn't stay with the town council forever on.
I think just as a point of clarity, all we're being asked for tonight is time to investigate the potential viability of this. So we're not being asked to commit to any funding this evening. It's literally just an exploratory exercise to look into the viability and to look into how it might work. Does anybody, Martin?
Just quickly, I would say that it sounds like an excellent idea. I think it's good to use Laura for this type of activity to investigate it, but the potential of setting it up with the view from the outset of it not being town council run project, but being potentially run by volunteers.
Yeah.
Do we have? Oh, sorry, James.
Yeah, I would back that. I think it's an excellent idea, and I understand that it would be regular transport, for example. No, not regular transport, but school, for example, sounds like regular, but in exceptional circumstances, that kind of thing. I'd be interested to know, from an economic development point of view, if our events, which are the lifeblood of the town, the high street, could be supported in some way for people who can't make it to events. I've come for an event tonight that was 200 people or so for the Gardens question time. Really well supported. Everybody came by car seemingly. I know that because I was in the car park showing them in. The Sunday market, hopefully the Friday market. We've got the walkers this month. There's an awful lot going on, and there's a great program coming up. I would love this to be part of that, to encourage people who can't get around so much to access those events.
Lovely, thank you. So are there any further questions? If we could perhaps move to a vote. Is anybody, Martin, you're happy to propose? Okay, do we have a seconder? Garfield, thank you. No show of hands. Lovely, thank you very much indeed. So I think that moves us neatly on to item 6.8, the precept budget. I think obviously most of us have, or all of us have seen these figures. It's just as a means of explanation. Each set of figures has been before committee, the associated committee twice, and it's been through PNR, Policy and Resources, twice. So the levels of scrutiny have been quite high. There have been a couple of minor revisions, I think, since we last saw it. So at that point, if I could hand over to you, Kerry, you could perhaps explain in a bit more detail.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, so the the proposed budget within the papers, just want to clarify, includes the proposed staffing structure that was discussed at the last PNR meeting. I know we're going to discuss that further when we go into the staffing matters later on. But just to highlight the other points that have changed. So the grants line, the grants and SLAs, we are anticipating an £11,190 underspend for this year. So what we're proposing to do is carry forward that amount to next year and reduce our grants line that we had in the budget of 30,000 to accommodate this, so that we therefore use the carry forward and the 18,810 to create that 30,000. So that's just clawed back a little bit on the precept there. Our devolved assets and services line within the policy and resources cost centre, we have reduced from £100,000 to 73,842. So this was discussed at the last PNR meeting. It is 50% of the ops manager role. So we proposed, it was recommended that we reduced the devolution line to cover 50% of that role, and that's been reallocated to staffing. We have since PNR created a new line within the tourism cost centre for the digital notice board. So we're using a new supplier going forward to support us with that. So the main thing we want to check is that the council are happy that we have separated that out into its own line. Previously, that has come from the marketing budget. If you are happy that that has been separated into a separate line, I would like to suggest that we also move £500 from the marketing budget into that line, because that's where the SIM costs, monthly SIM costs, come from. And so then that means everything that goes into the digital notice board line is everything that comes out. So it's just transparent. It won't impact the bottom line at all of the budget. And then we have the budget for the IT allocation was increased by £1,500 for the introduction of a CRM system. So that's what's within the papers. We also have two further officer requests since the papers have gone out. One does not impact the bottom line at all. However, we had £2,500 allocated to youth engagement. So that's within the policy and resources cost centre. That was put in provisionally because we weren't sure if we were going to get funding for it. We have received the funding for the Youth Council. However, we would like to propose that we rename that line Youth and Community Engagement, and we move it to the ACT committee, as there are various events that we put on in terms of volunteer yeah, that we would like to use that allocation for. So again, it wouldn't impact the bottom line. It would be renaming the line from youth engagement to youth and community. And then the other request that we have had from officers is for one slight increase to the Hello Shepton events marketing line. So this is an increase of £1,400. This would be for banners for 5 of the events, reusable ones that have been put up as for the Christmas lights. They were put up on bridges and around the town. They can be reused each year, so the date can just be a new number stuck on top. But it would mean increasing Hello Shepton marketing events budget by £1,400, which does have a slight impact on our very bottom line.
Lovely. Kai.
What's CRM, please?
Oh, do you want to take this on a sec?
So CRM is a customer relationship management piece of software. And effectively what this would enable us to do is keep information with callers' permissions about why they've called in. So if somebody is phoning in and asking for updates on improvements in the park, then we've got their details and we can keep in touch with them. Or if somebody has repeatedly phoned and said, I've phoned about this bin 3 times already, why aren't you doing anything? We can have a look and say, well, actually, we've only got 1 record of your phone call, and at that point we asked you to provide more information and we haven't received it yet. Or actually, I'm really, really sorry, you have phoned 4 times and we'll get onto it, I'm really sorry. So it helps us manage our relationship as a council with the community and also supports our outward communications.
Janet.
Try and get that right. Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'm aware this is budget's obviously gone through so much scrutiny. So I think for us, it's just sort of highlighting and it's picking up on Rob Horton's presentation earlier and what we know or suspect might come from Somerset Council, that we suspect there's going to be sort of greater increases. So I think from my perspective, it's just making sure we're really aware of, I know we've worked really hard to keep this under 4%. And I'm just wondering whether we can squeeze any further changes to bring it even slightly down to maybe 3% or something. I know price per person equates to something really small. It's just that when people look at when we were talking earlier, when the bill comes out, people see a percentage increase. That's what they will look at. So if we can't take the budget down any more squeezes, and I'm aware it's sort of it's small changes, can we at least make sure that the communications actually say what it equates to in pounds and pence? Because I think that's going to be really important, because when the leaflets hit the door this year, we don't want people with their pitchforks and lanterns out, as it were. But yeah, if we can crunch it down a little bit, that would be fantastic, because I did look at the numbers, and I'm not a financial person, but when you look at where we were for 2023-24, I think it went up over 700,000. And then this is proposing, then it went up 343, I think it was. And this is proposing it's a 50,000 increase. Am I about right? Which in the grand scheme of things isn't huge. But if there was any way of making sure we can take that down a little bit, yeah, well, for me, I think it might be where we look at the staffing, because I know that's already built in. So, yeah, it's just making it logged, given what we're hearing from people, really. Sorry, not very coherent.
Thank you, Janet. I believe Garfield was next.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really responding to Robin as well, basically. I was just scribbling something out, so I'll read it out. Remember, we did come from one of the lowest precept bases in Somerset, and I remember that all too well. I don't know what the comparisons are with the rest of the country, which Robin mentioned, but we were increasing our precept incrementally. So comparison of actual levels is much more valuable than the year-on-year percentage increases. All of us know that we are being burdened by more and more demands on our services and delivery. None of this comes without cost or staff with the high degree of skills necessary to match the needs of our town and our citizens. A great deal of effort has already been made at all of the subcommittees to identify the needs of the council and the town to deliver the services in an effective and prudent manner. Past freezing of the precept for SMTC managed only to run the town to a place where nothing or next to nothing was being done or even maintained, let alone improve the town. Again, I'd remind us all that we are inheriting many new responsibilities, some still unknown, as Somerset Council struggles to do anything other than its statutory services. So I just think we need to have that tiny little bit of headspace. So I think with the care that's been taken through the committees to try and get us to this point, arguing about, sort of tenths of percentages, I just think we need to be aware of what's coming our way and be ready for it.
Thank you, Garfield. Martin.
Just a tiny point, hopefully not being too nitpicky about it. Line 4105, Highways Data Project, which was previously £1,896, is now budgeted for 5,000. Is that the footfall data recording, or is it something else? And if it's not the footfall data recording, there's another question about the footfall data. Is the football data, how much is that costing, and is it actually useful to anybody? Because I haven't found it. So
the short answer is that the footfall data is costing us £1,896, and earlier in the year, the council agreed that we could overspend that budget line, therefore preserving the 5,000 specifically for data gathering. And that was a request by the TDMP committee, and they requested that same amount go in again for next year. In terms of the value of the data, that's not really for me to assess. I mean, I can give you my views on it and I can provide you a report on it, but it's the council's decision whether or not it's providing sufficient value or whether it might be providing better value if the geolocators were somewhere else. In terms of how, if you're looking at squeezing pennies and pounds from various places, there are various budget lines that have not been spent this year that are likely to not be spent this year, but nonetheless more money has been put in for next year. That in some cases is a very definite deliberate decision by the committees that that pot is accumulating so that a bigger piece of work can be done. But I would suggest that that's possibly, if you are looking at savings, that's where you're looking at them.
You want to say something else, by the way? So I think I was the only one who voted against the budget last year because I wasn't very happy with the scrutiny process that P&R did on it. I feel very differently this year. I think we have scrutinised the budget really, really well. I've seen the P&R meeting back in November. I watched it on YouTube. And I've been obviously part of Ray and full council. And I don't feel like that this year. I feel like this budget has been, there's obviously so many figures on this spreadsheet and we can't just go through every single one of it now because it's absolutely massive, which is why we do the process of going through each committee and back to full council. But I do feel confident that we have scrutinised this budget really, really well this year. And my personal opinion is probably that we should be voting this through. I think we could go for it and be like, oh, let's take a few grand off here and there. But overall, we have to make ourselves resilient as a council because we have got big things coming our way with the devolution of services. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Abby. Matt.
Well, that's queued me up very nicely, thank you, because just an observation and a question. The observation is for those councillors worried about money here and there and should we have this, should we have that. We're still in a position that Somerset Council should be devolving stuff to us at any moment, and that could be including West Shepton playing fields. It could be the market, well, we say it should be the market from the 1st of April, and it could be lots of other things that we don't know about. Come April, Somerset Council might be basically put up against the wall and have a gun pointed to the head. Either commissioners could be called in because it could be declared effectively bankrupt. And when that happens, then things will get really fruity. And what we need to be doing is banking money. I hate to say it, but getting money into our back pocket now to continue those services, as Garfield said, in case that situation happens. So yeah, I think we need to. I think the scrutiny process has been really good, and I think we're in a good position now. Just on the back of that, it is sort of written in black and white, but it's so important. I just wanted to double check. Last year, we banked an extra 100k for devolution services. We've spent some of that on CCTV, on taking over the toilets and things like that. I just want to double check. For this year, we're intending to take the operations manager's salary out of that. Does that still leave us a reserve of 73k? Is that what I'm reading correctly?
Sorry. Yes. So I have effectively reduced the devolution line and put that money against staffing. So the staffing cost will come from the staffing cost centre. The 73,000 is devolution. Nothing else in terms of the staffing will come from that unless we agree something else. So, sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? So are we ready to move towards, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to share, so with the additional £1,400 for the banners that have been requested, it does slightly impact the bottom line. So this, if agreed, this would then be what our precept demand in yellow was looking like. So the precept increase would be 4.95%, the band D increase 3.38%. So that's with the additional £1,400. So slightly different to what went out in the papers.
Does anybody have any more questions about that? Or are we okay? Right. So just talking about numbers. So this proposed increase represents on a band D property 19p a week, and I know 19p just has to sound like a very small amount, but there are people in the community that we all know that are really struggling. But I think for the reasons that we've all discussed this evening, we put it up a lot last year, and anecdotally, we're hearing Bruton, for example, are putting theirs up by 70% this year. They didn't do what we did last year. They're having to do it this year. So I think we've actually been quite prudent, and obviously we have an A and a B before us. So do I have a proposer for the first part of the recommendation to basically resolve the budget and precept demand in principle, deferring the financial decision to after the staffing structure item proposed to be held in confidential session, and we'll talk about that again in a moment. This meeting to delegate to the town clerk all details for discharging this decision. So do I have a proposer for the first part? Matt, is it a question or are you proposer? Thank you very much indeed. Garfield, a seconder. Could I have a show of hands, please? Question.
Sorry, which one is Matt proposing? That one or the one on papers in front of us?
We're
proposing
looking at
that one.
at the revised one,
Yeah,
yes, with
that's
the
fine,
extra
thank you.
£1,500. So I have a proposer and a seconder. Could we have a show of hands, please? Thank you very much indeed.
Can I just check what Martin Lovells, is he abstaining from this one?
Martin, are
Sorry,
you
I didn't see your hand. Were you voting in favour of this budget? Thank you.
wonderful? Thank you very much. And do we have a proposer for the second part of this? Thank you. And a seconder?
And Janet, is that?
Janet, I believe you were slightly ahead of Matt there, so thank
Sorry.
you. A show of hands, please. Thank you very much indeed.
And it's on that one, yeah.
So that takes us neatly through to item 1.9. The market charter. If I could hand over to Claire on this one, please.
Okay, so this one is a bit of belt and braces. It was January 2023 that we received the members' motion and the council resolved to request the market charter, the Friday market, including the charter and all rights, etc., so that we could run it as a town council. And that was resolved, but it's taken 2 years to get where we are now. And then with a sudden sprint at the end, which we thought was relatively early on into the middle, we are now moving to having this transferred over by the 1st of April. So fantastic news for this council, and a little bit last minute. However, I wanted to make sure that this council was still committed to the transfer of the market and that we would then run it. If I say as is, what I'm saying is it will still be the charter market on a Friday where the stall holders come with their stalls and their pitches. We would be responsible for putting out the road closure signs, and we'd be responsible for collecting the rent, and we would be responsible for checking their insurance. So I just want to make it really clear, because some of you don't know my background. I have 15 years of experience of running a charter market for a town council. So I'm more than comfortable that I have the skills and ability to keep this running for you and improve the attendance of stall holders at the market for the meantime, while the council thinks if it wants to do anything differently, it can do so. My ambition is to get this as seamlessly transferred as possible. I'm confident that we've got the skills within the existing team to run it that way. If we were going to attempt to run it in any different manner, we would need to be putting a business case together and recruiting staff to do that. So can I get on and get this transferred and over the line?
Sorry, can I just ask, you've got enough time to do it, have you?
Yes, because I will oversee it and it's relatively straightforward to oversee, and I've got capacity within the staff team to do the different parts of that role. I can do it if it's transferred in the way it currently is.
I believe Janet was next. Garfield.
Thanks. Claire, it was just a question actually on the ability to do it. I know that it's shown in the operations manager role in terms of the role profile to manage this. And obviously we know that the market's going to come to us with effect from the 1st of April, but the operations manager won't be appointed by 1st of April. So in that interim period, are you talking about your ability to manage it and with your team within that interim period, with the potential that it would then move to the operations manager? Is that how you envisage it?
Absolutely, that's it. Yes. I'm confident that I've got the team around me that can manage that, in particular with this interim position that we've got, the open spaces manager, the tasks of please can those road closure signs go out on a Friday and then be collected back in again would be an immediate, please can you do that? And in terms of collecting the rent, I would move very quickly to online pitch collections. If they're not already, I have asked that question of Somerset and I'm waiting for that information. The other thing that we would need to check annually is their insurance. So depending on what position they're at with Somerset, if their insurances were always checked on the 1st of April, then that is going to be a piece of work I would have to do straight away. But it might be that they weren't, and therefore it would be annually on the date that they've been last presented. So I'm not considering it to be too onerous.
Garfield.
First of all, I think that we're very fortunate to have a town clerk with that experience, and obviously we should draw on that. That's point one. Point two is we should also be aware of the fact that there have been attempts. I mean, I honestly can say that we've had probably Martin Lovell and I would probably remember, attempts to get the market up and running. So we actually had a market for a short period of time that actually went all the way up the high street and all the way up to Haskins, basically occupying all of that space and all the way down Town Street, and it dwindled and disappeared again. There's a history here. We are a town which has struggled with its market more than many other towns, and certainly when you consider that, I mean, all right, Wells is a city, but it's the same size as us. It's exactly the same population within 500 people. So in other words, we've got a settlement 4 miles away with an extremely successful twice weekly market. We actually struggle with, if we're lucky, 4 or 5 market stalls, and we have dwindled to this before. All I'm simply saying is that we have a I wouldn't say a mountain to climb, but a few hills to climb, and I don't think we'll get there quite immediately. I think it will take an effort, and I think that absolutely involving the staff led by our very capable town clerk with that degree of experience that she has, which should be at the head of all this. I do actually think we also should be drawing on the skill sets of others in the town, if not immediately, very soon after, because I do think managing expectations is going to be something quite important when we take this over. Look at the success of how we actually have recently just delivered the Christmas experience. I was going to say Christmas lights experience. It was spectacularly successful. All I'm simply saying is that I think that it will be a number of steps to get us to the point of actually having a solid market that's going to be there, not just in 6 months' time, but 3 years' time and maybe 30 years' time. This is. We've tried to do this before and we have not succeeded. We've got more chance of succeeding this time, but I don't think we should be doing anything other than actually making sure that we divvy up the responsibilities to actually use every skill set that we've actually got in the town, not just the town clerk and not just the staff, but actually others in the town as well. And we should be reaching out to those people as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Garfield. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything? So, Matt.
Sort of on the back of what Garfield's saying, I think the first and foremost, the key priority is the smooth implementation, the smooth transfer of power, if you like, or ownership of the responsibility for the market, which is what we need. But I think there is an ambition. I think that's what we're lacking here. As we've discussed here, there's an ambition among some councillors. The Economic Regeneration Group, for instance, is absolutely critical to this, to really use this as an opportunity, maybe not from day one, but quite quickly to upweight the size of the market, to curate the market to be so much better than it currently is and to market it sort of more effectively. So I'm sort of with Garfield that I think we need to cast the net wide. There are people in this town, I won't name names, but there are specific people who are involved in the Sunday market and other events at Creator Date and places like that, who have real talent that we should be tapping into to make this not just an operationally smooth transition of responsibility, but to really create something special. So I would like the net to be cast quite wide to encapsulate that and capture that ambition.
Yeah, I'd like to second or third that, because I think it is really important that we have a vision that aims high, because I think the whole reason why we wanted to take the market back was that we saw it was in a really sorry state. We wanted something far more ambitious, and I think we should keep focus off that. And I completely agree. Let's draw in all the talent and not just the talent, but also the initiative that we have in town, because I think the people that feel excited and strongly and have the skills and the extra skills, I think the smooth transition is absolutely vital. It's really important, and your experience will be majorly helpful there. But I think we need to, all of us, remain aware that the reason why we asked for it back in the first place is we've had this market for 700 years, and it's, we're a market town. It ought to be something great, which it isn't at the moment.
Thank you, Kai. Anybody else like to say anything? We obviously have a recommendation in front of us. Do we potentially, Matt?
I think this conversation hasn't finished here yet. I think I would like to propose that the council definitely resolves to accept the devolved service of the weekly Friday market from Somerset Council, but the devolution working party meets quickly, like in the next few days, with the clerk to really scope out what we're trying to achieve here. What's the size of the prize? If the size of the prize is a smooth implementation of the market from Somerset to us, I personally would be dissatisfied. That's not what this is about. I mean, that's part of it. Obviously, as I said, that's the main thing. But the opportunity to grow the market and to be something much bigger, I think, is what the size of the prize is. So that's what I would like to resolve. Delegate authority to the, I guess it was, I don't know whether the devolution working party could do this or via Ray, but to scope out what the at least medium-term plan is. Maybe it's not from the 1st of April, but later in the year, what the market plan is. Does that make sense? Claire, could I ask for clarity? What would be the best way if we were? Could the devolution working party take authority to do that, or would it have to go via Ray?
This counts, so it does depend entirely how this full council wants to address this. If you resolve as per the papers that I get on and do the transition, part of my remit without any further instruction is to do the very best I can with every asset and service that we provide, and that would be taking on board all of the comments and aspirations. So I would see that a meeting of the devolution working party that says, we would like to have a plan that will increase the number of stalls by 50% within the first year, for example. I'm plucking because this is on the spot. But if you set that scope out, and I thought it was achievable, it doesn't need to go back through a committee. It would only need to go back through a committee or full council if the devolution working party wanted to do something that was significantly different from what the service is, not just an improvement, but a change. So if, for example, you said, we want to change, I'm going to throw in something you cannot do. Let me make that really clear. If you want to change the day of the week, which you can't because the charter is set to be on the Friday, then we would have to look at that differently, and I couldn't do that under delegation.
Okay, but there's a sort of elephant in the room here. We have a Sunday market CRC that was set up. If they wanted to contribute to the operational running of it, and I'm not saying they do, I'm not saying they don't, but obviously conversations have been had with some, would that need to come back to, because I guess that's a change of role and responsibility.
If members that are also involved in the Sunday market want to contribute to the discussions of the devolution working party in how the town council could run it, that wouldn't need to go any further. If the devolution working party said, we want to subcontract a CIC to deliver the market, then that would absolutely need to come back to full council for a decision, because there are conflicts of interest that would apply that need to be declared before the debate.
Just to sort of clarify that point, I think what I'm picking up on here is that everybody understands that you have the experience that you have, which is great and potentially could be a great part of it. But it strikes me, from what others are saying, and it's possibly my own feeling as well, that within our community we have some fairly key potential stakeholders. We're not talking about contracting to anybody to do anything specifically, but I think there's a wider body of work possibly that we could do with looking at. We're going to get one opportunity to get this right, and we need to get it right. It's so important for the town. Matt.
So yeah, well, my proposal is as per the recommendation on 6.9.7, but with the amendment that the devolution working party meets soon to scope out a long-term or terms of reference and plan for the Friday market, and if it wishes to bring a specific proposal to a future full council.
Garfield, sorry.
If that is a proposal, I'm happy to second it.
Is that the proposal? It is a proposal. Okay, thank you. So we have a seconder. If we could have a move to a vote and have a show of hands, please.
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is the staffing matter. I think, or I obviously had a conversation with Claire earlier. We would like to try and keep this in the public domain. Obviously, this is a budget setting meeting, and obviously there's sensitivities around budget. So I would just ask members to keep facts and figures non-specific. You know, if we're talking about salaries, we're talking about those within grades. So I think if Claire feels that we are going into an area that perhaps should be in a private session, that's what we'll do. But I think the feeling is we would like to try and keep it as a public session. So if I could hand over to Claire, please.
Okay, so to reiterate what's just said, anything that's been printed in these papers here is in the public domain and can be shared. That's absolutely fine. So, and we are talking job descriptions and roles, not people and individual. We're certainly not talking performance this evening. So those are my caveats, and I will poke if we go in the wrong places. The proposal that is in front of you has already gone through several stages of thinking and refinement. I did bring my workings, if anyone wants to see how we've arrived at where we are. And what we have done here is try to future-proof the staffing offering to take us past what we foresee devolution to look like. So it accommodates administering the market by someone other than myself. It accommodates when we have our own office space that has a room that can be hired out to the community, and that very much needed community space. It accommodates the increased administration that we are finding with our roles. We're all hoping at the moment, but just. And it incorporates the high speed, high volume and ambitious projects that you've all identified in the strategic plan. That said, I think the papers have pretty much spelled out what it looks like and how it's going to work in terms of the descriptions and the grades. We've sense checked those scale point grades against other town councils that have recruited to similar roles in recent times. And I've also sense checked those councils to be similar in size to Shepton Mallet. So we're not comparing apples and pears here. I guess at this point, sorry, one more thing on the budget side of things. Kerry's already mentioned that in the budget that is subject to agreed, we have the money allocated to be available from the 1st of April because that's our new financial year. But you will see from the timelines in there, we have got a slight delay in start for the 0.5 admin person, just because of the timeline. If I get the go ahead today, how long it will actually take to finalise the job description, get the adverts out and go through that process. With the other role, with the operations manager role, because that is a 50% open spaces management and 50% looking after the raid committee in a similar way that Tara had done previously. We are not wanting to overlap any more than about 10 days with our current open spaces manager. So that would be recruited for slightly later on into the summer. So there'll be a slight saving on the basis that they won't be in post from the 1st of April. if you take it forward as I've put it in front of you. Shall I open to questions at this point?
Do we have any questions? So are we all happy with this structure as it stands? Kai?
I do have a question because I wasn't in this discussion. So the fact that the what's it called, open spaces manager, that is a temporary job, does that mean that the structure is set up in such a way that that role can be taken over by other staff afterwards, or will the staff in future be expected to self-manage?
That was a really good point that I wasn't probably clear enough on. The current temporary role for the open spaces manager, their role is entirely to get our team rejuvenated and operating on a day-to-day basis independently. They know what their work schedule is, they get on and they do it, and then there is general oversight. And then the operations manager role that is coming in as a full-time role, if you agree to it, will have the same oversight that Paula used to, that Tara used to. So they will still be checking in on a daily basis, but it won't be a, have you done the bins? Have you done your play inspections? That will be taken. So the 6-month temporary role is getting them from A to B, and operations manager will take them from B onwards.
Something that Claire explained to me earlier on, which I think is a very good point, is that obviously we never know with staffing structures what's going to happen. And obviously we have a situation at the moment that's sort of fairly dynamic. So ultimately, this is really just a proposal today. These aren't set in stone. And if our staffing structure changes, we would obviously change these with them. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of ways of looking at it. The budget, again, I keep saying, if you agree, it is to make provision for these. Tonight, you could say, yes, that makes perfect sense. Let's go ahead with that. And I can go ahead and schedule in the recruitment of these 2 roles. Or you might say, okay, I really like this one, but I'm still not entirely sure about this one. Can we hold fire, maybe bounce it back to policy and resources and just revisit it? And if I take as an example, I know that when P&R discussed it, one of the concerns that they had was with the operations person, that it seemed to be 2 separate roles that work side by side. Why would you have somebody that managed outside spaces and was also able to clerk a committee? Notwithstanding that Tara did it, but I'm also well aware that Blandford Forum Town Council, for example, their deputy town clerk is their open spaces manager, their head groundsman, and he has done that job expertly for over a decade, and I know that it works well. So I'm not saying we can't poach John, unfortunately. I'm sure he would be fantastic, but I think Blandford want to keep him. But I know that those people do exist and those skills can be found within one single person.
James.
Yeah, this all looks great to my untrained eye. Just a couple of questions. First of all, Kerry's role is now managing 4 people, whereas she wasn't directly managing people before. So a question for Claire, and I'm sure I know the answer, that you will continue to oversee the management and the span of control of people like Kerry.
Try and stop.
For as long as it takes. I thought that might be the answer. And then the second point is actually, and I don't know whether I'm allowed to ask this, but I think I did read about Jack Cowan, but is there any more information you can give us about his experience and what he did previously?
He is an experienced grounds manager, has managed multiple teams in various outside spaces, places. Does that make sense? I think that's probably the extent of what I can tell you in public session, but pop in if you want to have a chat or if you want to meet him.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Okay, thank you. Claire, could you remind us specifically what the recommendation is?
Yes, I left that bit blank. That was something to do with rewriting it so many times that I didn't actually end up on a final decision. So you as a council have the option, if you like what's written in the papers, you can just vote to adopt that. knowing that the budget is already covered, we don't need to make any tweaks to it, and the timelines and the job descriptions are set out. So let's say that's option A, vote as per the papers. If there's any nervousness or slight hesitation about any of either of the two new roles that you would like P&R to look at in a little bit more detail, then what I suggest you do is adopt the principle of 2 new additional roles and then ask P&R to have another look at whichever role it is that you're slightly hesitant about. If you want me to look at third and fourth options, you'll need to give me ideas of how you want me to phrase those.
Okay, thank you.
John indicating.
Janet.
I wonder if I could therefore make a proposal for the option A, which was adopt as per the papers.
John.
My only comment, to reiterate what a number of colleagues have said, is we're a forward-looking town council who wants to future-proof things, and I think option A as proposed is the way forward.
We've Garfield then James, please.
Yeah, my observation is just a small one, and that is that I've also heard Claire say quite clearly that that we will also keep on reviewing what is the best way of doing this. So in other words, we're asking for this as being our best bet at the present time. But if we actually are prepared to actually be a little bit flexible, in addition to that, then option A seems to me to work very perfectly well at this point.
Thank you. James.
I'll be happy enough to second Janet's proposal. I think it's as Garfield says, it can be a flexible structure, but it seems to be a step in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder. So if we could move to a vote, please. Thank you very much. Could we now go on to item 6.11? Carrie, could I pass that over to you?
Thank you. May I borrow it? Sorry, just to. Yes. So last item is payments. So these are the payments for December. Again, I attached in the same format as before all of the electronic payments, but also the credit card payments broken down as well, for full transparency. And we just need to minute if in acceptance the resulting back balance, which was £689,966.19. Any questions? Sorry.
Janet.
Actually, no questions, but again, I just wanted to sort of commend Kerry on the detail and the thoroughness of this. It made it a really easy read and was able to go through all the documents, and not the documents, the line by line, to sort of with a bit of scrutiny. So thank you very much for that. And for me, it was just an observation, actually. I was a little bit horrified, actually, how much the damage to the skate park actually cost due to the vandalism. And I just thought, oh, you know, it breaks my heart. I mean, we know vandalism happens, but it was just, I read it and thought, flipping it, was that how much it cost? So nothing we can do about it, but yeah, bit of a shame, isn't it?
James.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think it's great, really detailed, easy to read document. So I'd be happy to propose that we accept it.
Okay, so do we have a show of hands then, please? Oh, sorry.
Janet.
Sorry, before the meeting closes, can I just ask one thing which I omitted to ask? It might have cost implications. What are we doing, given the fact that the depot was broken into, in terms of its security? Because I was unaware it had been broken into as for a piece of information, so I didn't pick it up earlier, but there wasn't a place to do that.
No, I sort of covered it briefly when we were talking at the quarter three report, that we are making an insurance claim against what was stolen, but I alluded to the fact that we might spend a tiny bit more than we had previously. One of the changes will be to install a ground bolted tool safe, so that because what the people did is go for the easy grab and climb back over the fence equipment. We've replaced the locks, but we're looking into getting higher security. Is that not good? Tool safe. Is that not what I said? I'm so sorry. Yes. So the tool safe, and then better locks that are harder to get the bolt cutters into. So we are we are making improvements as a result of that.
Okay, lovely. So we have a proposer and a seconder for the payments. So if we could move to a vote, please.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much. And I believe that brings our meeting to a close.
Congratulations, Chair. You've taken the budget meeting through in 1 hour and 5 minutes.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Thank you, everybody, and well done.